Inshallah. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Muhammad wa ahli baytihi tayyibin tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum. So we were talking in God's emissaries about Musa alayhi salam, and there was this personality that Allah had blessed named Bal'am. And Bal'am, he was going to, Allah had blessed him and then he messed it all up. And then he ended up going with Fir'aun. Allah gave him a sign before. He was very high levels of sincerity and spirituality, and Allah granted all his dua to be answered. But Fir'aun was able to sway him and bring him over, and he wanted to use his power to pray for Musa's destruction. But we said that Bal'am, he could have risen to very great heights, by the gifts that Allah had given him. He had the blessings, barakat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he clung to the earth and he lost what he had, and he became very twisted and ended up destroying himself. And we mentioned that we have this fight in ourselves, jihad al-nafs, that is the greatest jihad, is to struggle against ourselves and, the inner struggle that we have. And we see that we mentioned that jihad, regular jihad, is, wajib kafa'i, that all people need to do it until it is satisfied, and then you don't need to, the obligation is removed off of other people. For example, we have a death of a believer. The funeral is wajib kafai, the burial on the people. But when someone is fulfilled the obligation is removed from other people. And we have other things which are wajib aini. Wajib aini are obligations that it doesn't matter if everyone else has done it, you still have to do it. It's wajib on yourself that you have to do that, such as salat and fasting and these things. So we see that jihad al-nafs is wajib aini. Just because everyone else has done, worked on themselves, it doesn't mean that it's okay, I don't have to work on myself. This is something that we all have to do. We said that the human self is like a jewel, it needs to be protected, needs to be guarded. We see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in Surah Nazi'at, but as for him who feared to stand before his Lord and restrained his soul from lust, lo, the garden will be his home. So how do we do this? How do we reform ourselves? How do we, overcome our desires? The first one we mentioned is that we have to train ourselves. We have to learn our beliefs, learn the aqa'id. We have to learn the teachings. We have to learn the rulings from Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, as much as we are able. Thus, from this, we'll know the proper path to take towards living in the way that's pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. We have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us in his way, but we also have to put an effort in towards, this too. We have to put a strong effort in. Anything we want to do in life, we put effort towards it. For example, we mentioned if we ask Allah to guide us to a career path, such as being a doctor, and we say, oh Allah, help us become a doctor, do we think that we're going to gain all of the knowledge of medicine somehow and we don't put any effort in? No, we have to put it in to become a doctor to get the desired results that we want. We have to work for it. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us in that. So how can we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every day, Ihdina siratal mustaqim, guide us to the straight path, but we don't invest any effort into finding the straight path, or what is the straight path, so that I will be aware of what is the wrong path. So that way, if I'm going down the road and I notice the wrong turn, I won't go down that road. But if I don't know, God knows which way I'm going to go. I can go and make many mistakes, but with knowledge, our feet become planted firm and we won't sway this way or that way, and we'll stay on Sirat al-Mustaqim, inshallah. The second thing is we have to use our aql, our reasoning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us to overcome our animalistic self that we have. And if we allow our aql to become the authority on us, it will, it can control the passions that we have, the passions of ourself. It will govern our actions in a good way. It will place everything in the proper order, so that we could get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fasting is one of those ways that we can control our, animalistic desires, to control ourselves, to put ourselves in line. When we can control our natural desires, eating, drinking, sexual desires, for example, it's easier to control the other things like anger, urge to commit haram action. This has to be done through discipline. It's difficult, but we can achieve it through disciplining ourselves. Imam Qadam alayhi salam said to his companion Hisham, Allah has blessed people with two proofs. The first proof is apparent, and the other one is hidden. The apparent proofs are the prophets and the imams, and the hidden proof is reason and intellect. So we have to make use of these things that we have and not to make excuses for ourselves. We have to put hard work in on learning and disciplining ourselves by applying what we learn. Third thing, we have to make it a habit to look at the end result of the action. In order to make correct decision, we need to look at the end result. Does it please Allah or not? Will it bring Allah's displeasure or not? Also, what would my Imam say if he saw me doing this action? Imam Ali alayhi salam said, pondering invites a person towards good works and actions. We have to think about it. A lot of time we just act on impulse and we don't think about the end result. He says, thinking about the ultimate consequence before your action makes you safe against regret. And regarding Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, we see that he refrained by seeing the proof from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It says in Surah Yusuf, ayat 24, she advanced towards him, and he would have done likewise, had he not seen a sign from his Lord. This is how we kept evil and indecency away from him, for he was truly one of our chosen servants. A point to make here is that the prophets and the ma'sumin, they're not infallible by choice, by force. No one's forcing them to be ma'sum, but they're using, they're infallible by utilizing their intellect, their intellectual ability not to succumb to sin. They have the ability to sin, but they choose not to sin. They know the outcome of the sin. They know the evil effect of the sin, the disgusting nature of those sins, and they're repulsed by it. An example, if we see an old piece of food that's been rotten, an old cheeseburger, for example, that's sitting in the dumpster. If we are not starving, out of starvation, but just normal person, we see this old food, would we want to eat that food? Of course not. It will be repulsive. We're going to see the rottenness of that food. And this is how the prophets and the imams, an example of how they could see sin. They see it as the rottenness, of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They see most of mankind would be attracted to this sin that they are seeing. For example, they see khamr, alcohol, and it looks maybe everyone is having a great time and having fun, drinking, dancing, gambling, all of these things, partying. It looks attractive to the eye of people. But when the prophets and the imams and those who have knowledge they see these things, they recognize it for what it is. They remember the narrations about drinking and gambling and so on and so on, and the outcome of those effects in the hereafter, and they'll be repulsed by those things, even though they've been made fair seeming to the rest of the people, because the veil has not been lifted from their eyes and the veil is lifted by gaining knowledge and seeking help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, by Allah, most certainly we sent messengers to nations before you, but the shaitan made their deeds fair seeming to them. So he is their guardian today, and they shall have a painful punishment. This is Quran, Surah 16, Ayat 63. So we have to make sure that shaitan doesn't make our deeds seem fair seeming to us. We have to know and recognize the tricks. The fourth thing, just as we go to a physician when we get sick to get the diagnosis of what's wrong with us, and we want the treatment plan for us, we also have to consult the spiritual physicians to get treatment. We should go to those scholars of akhlaq, those scholars of ethics, who have been successful in carrying out the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, those who have purified themselves. We will know them when we find them, because they are very different than anyone else that we have ever met before. So we can tell when we're in the presence of them, like, wow, this person is very different than anyone else I've met before. Once we have found and diagnosed our spiritual diseases and our shortcomings, then we have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. We need to strive our best to work on the cures for these things. We need to ask these scholars, how can we work on ourselves? How can we accomplish this? How can we overcome this evil deed, for example? The fifth thing is having a good friend who can help us, support us, reforming ourselves, staying on the right track, these things. We see other people even have this, taken this route also in the people who are battling addiction. They have like Alcoholic Anonymous or Narcotic Anonymous or these type of groups. They have what they call a sponsor. So whenever the other person is feeling weak, like they're about to give in, they have a designated person that they call to strengthen them, to help them overcome. It's usually someone who has overcome that thing before in the past, a long time ago, and they've been clean for a long time. So we also should have someone that we can call, someone that can help us, some good believer, not the same circle of friends that are doing the same type of haram. We need someone that is a good, strong believer that we feel weak, we can call them and say, hey, I'm going through this problem, having this issue. I feel like I want to go do this sin. Can, how can I overcome, or can you come and have tea with me, or we go restaurant, or just get me, I don't want to be by myself, I need help. And we should strengthen each other in staying on the right path. We have tradition from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he quoted Isa alayhi salam. He said to his disciples, sit with someone who on seeing him makes you remember Allah. His logic adds to your logic, and his practice makes you inclined for the hereafter. It's very important because when we have a friend that's conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the way that they're living their life is on the path of Islam, they will remind, one another. If either of them gets distracted or they start to go off of the right path, they start to drift a little bit, they will remind them and they'll pull them back to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sixth one is learning from the faults of other people.
I have a question, Malana.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
My question is that, I totally agree with the fact that we should, talk to some higher authorities for spirituality, but to tell our weaknesses to somebody, like I have this fault, or I'm going to do this sin, or I'm doing this sin, is it not something which is discouraged? Like we should not tell other people our weaknesses. And will it be the same thing like people go in Christianity and tell their sins, and then kind of. So I was under the impression then we should not tell our weakness to other people other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Well, the issue is here is with the Christians, they do confession, like the Catholics. But that confession is that those person absolve them of their sins. And they say, when you tell them, then they say, okay, I have forgiven you in the name of God, and go, or do such and such.
Sure.
I don't know, they like Hail Marys or something like. It's like if we told someone to go do Tasbih 10 times, and then you're
Right.
or something like that. But this is not the case. We're not going to, like, for example, one of the marja and telling them, oh, absolve me of my sins that I have committed. But we're going to someone who is has a better spiritual standing, and we're saying that we want to get closer to Allah, but we don't know how, and we need to overcome this. We want your guidance for this thing, and I have this problem, but I am, trying to overcome it. Can you help me? It's not like also not like we're going publicly telling the whole world that we're, for example, they don't go out and say, okay, I'm an alcoholic, and tell like everyone this. But if you're struggling with that, and maybe another believer who overcame that, maybe that person knows and they can tell you and they can help you. So I think in these cases it's fine, because we're not doing it like the way the Christians, they're
Okay.
looking for absolution of their sins. And it's encouraged for us to go to scholars of akhlaq and learn and try to overcome these things. And if we can't do it on ourselves, sometimes we can't do everything on ourselves. We need
Sure.
to get some help from somewhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So the next one was learning from the faults of other people. So once we see defect of others, and we, instead of paying attention towards that or criticizing it, we should investigate our own self, within our own self, to see if we're contaminated with the same faults, or in case we find it, these type of faults, we should look for the cure for those faults. In this way, we can learn a lesson from the faults of other people. So when we look at others, most of the time we just see what they're doing wrong, but we don't look at what we're doing wrong. We only see everybody else's problems, but we never seem to notice our own problems. And a lot of times what the other person is doing, we are doing that, or even worse than that. So the Prophet says, sallallahu alaihi wa he says, the fortunate is the one who learns a lesson from the faults of others. So when we see that this person has made this mistake and it caused him or her a serious problem, a serious issue, and they fell from their position because of this thing, then we should also realize that we don't want to do that either. The Quran is full of showing the mistakes of other nations and what they did and how they became destroyed. And this is because we also need to take lesson from this, that we don't repeat the same thing that the other nations do. Unfortunately, if they keep repeating these things over and over, and they're not taking lessons from the past. The seventh thing is self-reflection, taking account of ourselves daily. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam used to say, O son of Adam, you will always be your best as long as you have an admonishing inner self, and as long as you are anxious to take your own account, and as long as the fear of Allah is your norm, and sorrow over your lapses is your garment. O son of Adam, surely you will die one day. You will be resurrected and made to stand before Allah Most High and be questioned. So prepare and answer. So we have an inner admonishing self. So we have to take heed to that. And we have to make sure that we don't commit so many sins without doing istighfar that we cover our heart with rust. As the Quran mentions, those hearts that are covered with rust. We have to always ask for forgiveness from Allah and try to overcome, our lower desires and be better than we what we were before. Every day should be getting better. One of the narrations says the one whose 2 days are the same is a loser, meaning that he's lost out, because every day he should be getting better, not the same as yesterday. We have some examples from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, overcoming his anger. For example, when he is in the battlefield and he was about to slay one of the disbelievers, and the disbeliever spit in his face. He was going to kill him. At that moment, he got and walked away. He got up and walked away, because at that moment it would be because of his anger, and he wanted to. He was only fighting to, in the cause of Islam, in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fi sabilillah, not within his own self. So he overcame his anger. When normally, I would say for most people, if someone had a sword on someone and they spit in their face, they would just kill them right away out of anger, but not Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, because he had control of his nafs. Another thing is he never gave away money from the treasury, the Islamic treasury, to those who felt that they were entitled to it because of their position. They came to him and they wanted to, I believe Talha and Zubair, they wanted to come talk about some things that they wanted, some positions in government. And they didn't mention anything of what they were going to talk about, but Imam Ali alayhi salam was writing some things and doing some work for the Baitul Mal, or the treasury. And he put out the candle when they came, and then he lit another candle. And they asked, why did you do that? And he said, well, I was using this candle and it was bought from the treasury of the Muslims, so I use it as long as I'm working in the treasury. But you have come on some personal business, so I light the candle that I have from my personal funds. And when they saw this, they knew that there was no way that they could, get any corruption done with someone who is so, focused on these small little details, even that was just, even in these details, the matter of some wax from a candle, that they didn't want to misappropriate it. So they definitely knew they couldn't accomplish what they did, and they left. Other thing is how he overcame his desires in the path of Allah, that we see how pious Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was, that he wasn't even afraid when he slept in the bed of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, when the disbelievers were coming to kill him, that he felt that this was like the most peaceful sleep that he had ever had. But most people you would tell them, sleep in my bed tonight and pretend that you are me, because the people are coming to kill me tonight, and they're going to barge in my house with spears and swords, and they will all come and try to kill me. I want you to sleep in my bed. Everyone would be like, no way, I'm not going to lay in that bed, because they would be afraid. Even if they did lay there, they would be afraid. And but Imam Ali alayhi salam knew that this is fi sabilillah, and he was defending Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, which is the highest honor that one can have. He overcame what fear a normal person would have, even. And getting closer to Allah, elevate ourselves and our levels of spirituality by overcoming ourselves and working on ourselves. But we have to diagnose what is wrong with us, and what problems we are facing, what areas we are struggling in, where our weaknesses are. As I said before, every country has their weak points on their borders. So they send extra troops to guard those weak points. So we need to find our weak points with ourselves, and strengthen those areas as well, and not just ignore them. We have to look at ourselves as well, like to round ourselves in all areas. And if we find this aspect that we're weaker on, to focus on that and try to overcome those things, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his help. So these are some ways that we can raise our levels of spirituality, and also protect ourselves from succumbing to the fate of this person we're talking about, Balaam, where he was very high spiritually in a level. That's another thing. We should never think that, okay, I am so high level that I can never lose my faith and I always be Muslim and these things, because some people who are very high level, they lose their status. I mean, this person was given everything to him by his spiritual level was that his dua were always answered. And we even see Shaitan, for example, prayed to Allah for thousands of years and was the highest level of his group, you know. But what happened to him? He lost everything. So it can happen, and we have to make sure that we don't feel that we're immune from that. That we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to always guide us and to never let us leave the path, to plant our feet firm in the path of Islam. So it says Bal'am, he mounted his donkey and he went to ride with Fir'aun. But the animal, it wouldn't go. Even the animal knew, you know, like what this guy is doing is wrong. So he began beating the animal. He started beating it, and he was afraid that he would be left behind because he wanted to go with Fir'aun. So Allah gave the power of speech to the donkey. It asked, he said, "Why are you beating me? Do you want me to assist you by carrying you to Allah's prophet so that you can pray for his destruction?" This is what the donkey is warning him clearly. But Bal'am, I mean, imagine if your animal talked to you when you got on it to ride it, and your animal said, you want me to take you to commit a sin. I guess now it'd be the equivalent if we got in our car and we started our car and our car has the speech in it and it says to us, do you really want me to drive you to that nightclub, or that bar or wherever you're going? And we, right then we have a clear sign that we shouldn't do that and we should stop. But this didn't stop him, his animal talking to him. He wanted the things from that Fir'aun had because he had the worldly things, and he felt, I can get these things from him. And so he ignored the sign and he ended up beating his donkey to death. In his indifference to these warnings from Allah, he became like a stray dog which pants if you attack it and pants if you leave it alone. This is ayat mentioned in Quran about this. So the Bani Israel, they got to the shore of the Red Sea. Musa promised them that Allah would save them. But many had their doubts. They're like, how? Like, what is going to go on? How is he going to save me? We're going towards the sea. This is the dead end. How can we escape when we're running towards the water? So Musa reassured them that Allah would open a way where they saw none. And a lot of times we see the situation as hopeless. We see there's no, clear end in sight. But we have to put our faith in the one who can make a way out for us where others cannot. And the lesson in this is never to lose hope, never despair of the mercy of Allah. Because a lot of times, in our last moment where we think that everything is going to just implode on us and there's no hope for us and there's no way to fix this, something happens and Allah helps us in this moment from some place that we don't even expect to happen. This has happened many times. So Allah told Musa, tell Bani Israel to renew their covenant, their commitment to me as their one God, to bring to mind Muhammad, the foremost of all my servants, and to call to mind the station of Ali, the brother of Muhammad, and his pure progeny. Tell them to say, O Allah, through their intercession, let us cross over the surface of this vast water before us. If they do this, the water will become like solid earth beneath their feet. Subhanallah. The way for their salvation was to do tawassul of Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So we see that when we are in trouble, even things look impossible to us, that the tawassul of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam will even open the water for the water of the Red Sea. It will split the sea and make a way for the Bani Israel to cross to save Musa alayhi salam in the face of imminent death. The wasila of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam will save them. Bi'idhnillah. So when we get in trouble, when we have a problem and we are facing something so difficult, I don't believe it can be as difficult as the enemy chasing you into the sea. But it shows that even of that great magnitude, wasila of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam will save us and will help us. And we see this common theme with all the Anbiya alayhi salam, that they always called on the names of the wasila of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. So we saw with Ibrahim being cast in the fire, Nabi Nuh alayhi salam, when settling his ark, and all of these other prophets we have mentioned. So it continues. When Musa told the Bani Israel this, they were terrified. They said, "Will you now make us do what we fear the most? We fled from Fir'aun for fear of just such a death. Now will you force us across these murky waters with only these words to protect us? What do we know about what is in store for us on the other side?" Caleb asked Musa, "Did our Lord tell us to say this and walk on the water?" Musa replied, "Yes, he did." So Caleb asked, "And do you order me to do this?" Musa said, "Yes, I do." So Caleb mounted his horse, advanced toward the water's edge, renewed his covenant with Allah. He brought to mind Muhammad and the station of, or the maqam of Imam Ali and his progeny, Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, just as he was ordered to do by Musa. Then he said, "Ya Allah, through their intercession, let me cross over the surface of this vast water before me." With a spur to the side of his horse, he charged out over the surface of the water. His steed's hooves clapped across the water no differently from if it was dry land. He rode out some distance, then turned around towards Bani Israel. He told them, "My brothers and sisters, you must follow Musa, for these are words that open the gates of paradise. They lock the gates of hell, bring down rizq, provision, secure for Allah's servants and everlasting pleasure." So we see that when they obeyed Allah's prophet, the ground was made where they could walk on this water. So when he told Bani Israel this, it didn't get any reaction from them. We notice throughout the story of Bani Israel, they are always skeptical, doubtful, and they always complain a lot. They said, "No, this isn't good enough for us," because the water split, but there was still water on the ground. It was like a little bit of water. They said, "We will only walk on the land." At that instant, Allah told Musa, "Strike the sea with your staff and say, when you strike the sea with your staff, say, Ya Allah, bihaqqa Muhammad wa alihi, by the right of Muhammad, by the sake of Muhammad and his progeny, make the sea part." So he raised his staff, brought it down with a splash on the sea. Suddenly the sea parted. The sea water was driven back to the right and the left, leaving a long road through the middle, and it looked like a tunnel for them to go through. So there was water on each side, and it seemed like a dark tunnel that they had to go. The Bani Israel, they were surprised at this, and Musa told them to go. So they still refused again. They said, the floor of the sea is wet. We fear that our feet will get stuck in the muddy water and the muddy ground, so we don't want to go. Now, mind you, Fir'aun is like chasing them with his army to kill them, but they still are complaining. If we remember from before, when they were ordered to slaughter the cow, what type of cow? How old is the cow? What type of work does the cow do? What color is the cow? All this type of stuff, until it made it very difficult. But they didn't listen. It's still the same thing. They could walk on the water. Said, "No, that's not good enough. We need to walk on the land." The land is there. They said, "Oh, the ground is a little bit muddy. I don't want to get my shoes dirty. I don't want to get stuck in the ground." So, Musa said, "Oh Allah, for the sake of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, make it dry." Allah made a powerful wind blow across that place, drying the earth as it blew. The ground before them became dry, as though no water had ever touched it. Again, Musa told them, "Go." They refused. They complained. They said, "We are 12 tribes, the progeny of 12 brothers. If we all set on this road, each tribe will try to advance before the other one." We fear the bad feelings between each other as brothers. If only there were 12 different roads that we could go down, we would feel safe from what we fear now. So it's not good enough, the dry ground. They need 12 roads to go. So Allah ordered Musa to strike the sea 11 times more to the right and to the left of the first road to make the 12 roads total, the number of the tribes of Bani Israel. So he prayed, "O Allah, for the sake of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, expose the seabed for us and clear out the water before us." In an instant, the 11 additional roadways were formed, and the wind blew and dried all of them. They still refused. They complained. When each tribe enters its own road, they won't know what happened to the other ones in the other road. So Allah ordered Musa again to strike with a horizontal blow on the water on either side of the roadway and say, "O Allah, for the sake of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, make these pathways of water part so that they can see each other." When they were finally content, to begin their trek across the water, across the sea, they heard thunder of the horses' hoofs behind them. On the western horizon, they saw that Fir'aun's army was coming. Many have cried out that they had been caught. They're like, "This is it. It's over for us." But Musa, he reassured them. He said, "No, we haven't been caught. My Lord is with me. He will guide me." Musa sent Harun forward to lead the way while he remained back to make sure that all the people crossed safely. So we see from this that they were never content. They were never happy. They didn't really trust in their prophet, even when the prophet showed them many miracles and many things that no one else could have done. That had to be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to have faith in Allah and faith in the prophet and not have so many doubts as these people did, and that they were always making things hard for themselves, and they were never content. They were never happy with what they had. We have to be content with what Allah has given us and not be ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the Bani Israel were always ungrateful. And Allah had given them many chances, and we'll see throughout these stories that they are always complaining and always ungrateful. And being ungrateful it removes the mercy and the blessings from us. The more we are grateful and the more we are thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more our blessings will increase. So we have to always say Alhamdulillah, whether good or bad. We always have to thank Allah, whether it is something that we are, maybe we didn't want it to be this way, but this is the way it is. We have to say Alhamdulillah. These people, we shouldn't be like them, always complaining for every slight discomfort that we have. This life, we're going to have discomforts. Not everything is going to go the way we want it to go, or we planned it in our mind to go. We're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have many different trials and tribulations. It is all part of the nature of this life. So we just always have to remember to be thankful and grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to always depend on Him, trust in Him, and to always try our best to follow the path of His Prophet and accept them with unconditional obedience to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. So next week, inshallah, we'll find out what happened once they went into the sea, once they finally got all their things lined up the way they wanted to, and they were agreed, and then they went into the sea. We'll see what happened next week, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Yeah, mashallah. We'll see next week.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very interesting story. I always
very interesting,
think, because we always hear that Musa split the Red Sea, but never that, I can imagine, like, in my mind, like Musa striking the sea and, saying, Bahaka Muhammad wa ali Muhammad,
yeah.
like that, it's some mind-blowing.
That is true. Yeah. Jazakallah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.